Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin the conversation in a few moments. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin the conversation in a few moments. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. I have Lorraine May, who is joining us from Cork Midsummer, and I'd like to turn the mic over to Lorraine.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. And on behalf of Cork Midsummer Festival, I just wanted to really warmly welcome you all to today's In Conversation event organised by the Irish Arts Centre. The festival is in full swing, and we have reached the closing weekend where undoubtedly one of the highlights of this weekend and indeed of the festival is Marina Carr's extraordinary stage adaptation of Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, brought vividly to life under the brilliant direction of Annabel Cummin and a superb cast and creative team. To the Lighthouse is co-produced by Hatch Theatre Company and the Everyman in association with the Pavilion and Cork Midsummer Festival. And it has been available online for less than 24 hours. And already we have lots of 5-star reviews. It's been described as an extraordinary tour de force, unmissable, dazzling. And we really look forward to more feedback as the weekend goes on from our audiences. Thank you to the Irish Arts Centre. We're delighted to partner with you this year to bring this brilliant production to audiences near and far. And I'll hand you back to Rachel now to introduce our speakers for today, Catherine Hollis and Marina Carr.
Thank you, Lorraine. And Irish Arts Centre is honoured to be joining Cork Midsummer, Hatch Theatre Company, and the Everyman for this world premiere. We're also delighted to present today's talk with award-winning playwright Marina Carr, who will shortly be in conversation with Professor and Virginia Woolf scholar Catherine Hollis. Quickly about today's event, Catherine and Marina will discuss the work of adapting Virginia Woolf for theater, amongst other things, for the first part of the conversation, but we will open up for questions at the end. If you are in the Zoom webinar, please submit your questions at the bottom through the Q&A, and you can do that at any time. If you're watching on YouTube, please submit your questions in the chat box. We are pleased to have Catherine Hollis as moderator for today's talk. Catherine is a co-editor of the Edinburgh Companion to Virginia Woolf and Contemporary Global Literature, which was published just a few months ago, and recently guest edited a special issue of the Virginia Woolf Miscellany on book collecting. She is the historian bibliographer of the International Virginia Woolf Society and will hold that role through 23, and is the author of Leslie Stephen as Mountaineer. She teaches at the University of California, Berkeley. Marina Carr is one of Ireland's preeminent playwrights with 16 original works, including By the Bog of Cats and On Raftery's Hill, and 2 works for young audiences. Her adaptations include Hecuba, Anna Karenina, and To the Lighthouse. Her work has been produced by the Abbey Theatre, The Gate, Druid, the Royal Court, the Royal Shakespeare Company, Tricycle, San Diego Rep, and Milwaukee Rep, and she's been translated into many languages and produced around the world. Prizes include the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize, American Ireland Fund Award, the E.M. Forster Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Macaulay Fellowship, and the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Prize in 2017. Marina's work gives new, much-needed insight into the ways in which art and women in history intersect, so often uncovering that which has been ignored from the larger spotlight. Please welcome Marina Carr and Catherine Hollis.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And Marina, this is such an honor and a treat for me to be able to speak with you today. Congratulations on the play. It's getting 5-star reviews. I watched it last night and it blew me away. It's a triumph, as William Banks would say. I wanted to start, and I know everyone probably asks you this, but what I noticed in your play and in the performance is that it's mainly To the Lighthouse, and it sticks quite closely to the novel, but you also bring in some of Woolf's other works, particularly her late in life autobiographical fragment, A Sketch of the Past, which I think you do in an incredibly moving way. And so I wanted to ask about your history with Virginia Woolf, and particularly when you first read Virginia Woolf, what was appealing to you in her work, and how has that evolved over time? You know, because as we grow older, the way we think about our favorite writers may change. And so I just wanted to know, what has your relationship with Woolf been over your artistic lifetime?
Well, huge. To give the short answer, Catherine. I can't remember when I first started reading her. I think I was probably in my 20s. Mm-hmm. And she is, you know, she's the logical follow-on basically from Emily Bronte, who was a great favorite of mine as a teenager. I didn't read that many books as a teenager, but Wuthering Heights was one of them, and I still read it every year. And the other one was, strangely enough, it was Gorky's My Childhood. So they were the two books I found lying around the house. And so Virginia Woolf is kind of natural follow, but I came to her later. I wasn't taught her at university. So I came upon her myself, and I think I was probably late 20s. But once I started reading her, she's someone you come back to and come back to. And then, of course, the diaries are magnificent. The essays are magnificent. The shorter fiction is magnificent. All of the books, all of the novels are magnificent. And I suppose also I'm fascinated by her life, because I think it was a very troubled, very wonderful, very rich and varied life. This huge marriage at the center of it, but also deep tragedy. And look, who am I talking to? You run, you know, you've read everything about Virginia Woolf. I don't think I have, but I've read quite a bit. And all these biographies and all these different opinions by these fantastic biographers on who she was. And, you know, then her marriage to Leonard and the Hogarth Press and the whole Bloomsbury Circle, and then Leslie Stephen and Julia Stephen, that childhood. And then you have Vita Sackville West, and then you have Vanessa, her sister, the wonderful painter. So there's so much going on there. So she's an incredibly attractive character, you know, as even if she never wrote a line, she's incredibly attractive. But then you think of the legacy and you think of the work, and it's extraordinary the way she writes. I mean, she's an absolute modernist. I mean, if you ask me, I think she leaves Joyce and Eliot in the shade. But I mean, who am I to say that?
I agree, but
yeah. And I think they stole from her all over the place. But I mean, let's not go there. You know, if you look at
we've got people that agree with you on that.
Yeah. If you read Happy Days and you read anything by Virginia Woolf, you realize actually Beckett, who read everything, he obviously read Virginia Woolf. Obviously Joyce read Virginia Woolf. You know, obviously Pound, they all did. There's no doubt about that. But she was in the swim, but also her knowledge and her own absolute rigor and brilliance as well is exemplary, I think, for any writer. And you know, anyway, we could go on and on about that.
I think it's in A Room of One's Own that Virginia Woolf says, you know, we think back through our foremothers if we are women. And she's meaning people like Charlotte Bronte or Emily Bronte in your case. And I've often thought that for 21st century women writers, contemporary, not even women writers, but we almost have to think back through Virginia Woolf. Do you feel that that's the case as a woman playwright? I mean, obviously Woolf only wrote the one play, Freshwater, but is Virginia Woolf someone that we sort of almost unavoidably have to deal with if we are women or woman identified as a writer?
Well, I think she's kind of our Shakespeare in a way, isn't she?
Yeah.
You know, she is a towering, you know, she's the statue, she's the lighthouse, you know, for I think any woman writing. You know, it surprised me the amount of, you know, because you meet a lot of writers when you're going around at conferences and talking and readings, whatever, the amount of writers who haven't read Virginia Woolf you know, and I've written her off because there's this kind of snobbery around the Bloomsbury set and all of that. And I always find that incredible, that you're judging her on commentary without actually having read a line. Because if you read her, she is Mercury. What she can do with a sentence, none of us can do that, actually. The flights of the imagination, they are soaring.
I love what you said. Oh, sorry. I love what you said, that she's our Shakespeare, and her sentences, like, because her use of no one can do what she can do with a semicolon. No one in this world. It's
or a comma. No.
Those commas.
She'll start, yeah. You know, she'll start with the autumn leaves, and she'll end up with, you know, words inscribed. I'm paraphrasing now, but you know that great line, the autumn leaves, or whatever it is. And she'll end up with in the cave and words inscribed and, you know, golden books, etc., etc. But just her flight.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the other thing is the cost to write that magnificently. What it cost her.
Yes, the personal cost, because the exhaustion, and I think you staged that. I thought that was a really brilliant addition to, and I don't want to give too much away for everyone who's going to be streaming this in the future, but the way that you handle Act 2, or the middle section of To the Lighthouse, this was the big formal and artistic challenge for Woolf, right? Is to see the world, or the Ramses house, eyeless, by which she means without anyone there to see the house falling in rack and ruin over the 10 years that the Ramses are absent and World War I happens. And so I liked what you did by bringing in the cost, as you're saying, for Woolf. So time passes, and your adaptation opens with Virginia finishing the novel and falling into that exhaustion, right? And Leonard coming in and saying, you need to rest, and her resistance to that. So yeah, I thought that was a really important way to introduce this, I guess, the relationship between Woolf's life and her art, which I do think is underpinning your adaptation. I was wondering if we could talk about some of the characters, Mrs. Ramsay and Lily Briscoe, as women. And I know from in the last week or two, I've read your play on Rafferty's Hill and In the Bog of Cats. And I thought they were hilarious. So I find your combination of violence and Black humor funny, but in a way. And it's funny because when you think about Mrs. Ramsay, you don't often think of her as a funny character. In fact, there's a Woolf scholar named Brenda Silver who wrote an amazing essay called something like eight annoying things about Mrs. Ramsay. You know, because if we think of her as
a monster,
she's a monster. But I liked her in your adaptation because your adaptation, I think, I was just sort of wondering about the role of anger and rage and humor in your work, but then what you give to Mrs. Ramsay and to your actor, Dervla Crotty, right? Like when she voices everything she's thinking, she's no longer a perfect housewife and perfect mother. She is a monster, and she's screaming and she's mad. And I don't know, what were you thinking about with Mrs. Ramsay there, making her filled with rage and...
Well, I don't know if she's filled with rage. I love Mrs. Ramsay, but I think she's so complete, and she's so contradictory, and she's so majestic. And, you know, as Lily Briscoe says, but, you know, when Mrs. Ramsay is dead in part 3, she says, you know, but what exactly did you do? Like, you knitted. You told us all we must marry, and you looked out of windows. I mean, that's all you did. And how come you are this beacon for all of us? And yet she had that, and was something about, you know, but there are several things. There's something about someone that empty, that everyone can project everything onto them. You know, she's this beautiful, and as you know, Julia Stephen she was a known beauty. And I think her daughters lived in the shadow of that. And I think for someone like Lily Briscoe, who was, you know, poor, as Mrs. Ramsay says, poor little Lily with her little Chinese eyes and her little puckered face, no man will ever marry you. And for Mrs. Ramsay, it's like, if no man wants to marry you, that's it, you've missed out.
Yeah.
And yet she is very, very ambivalent about her own marriage. And she's very ambivalent about Mr. Ramsay, much as she loves him and much as he loves her. And I think it's one of these fantastic marriages that contains, you know, the light and the dark, the question and the answer, and the friction and the fragmentation that comes with living a long time with anyone. And then you've all the children, and they're all fractious, and all the visitors, everybody is fighting. I suppose one of the wonderful things about To the Lighthouse, adapting To the Lighthouse for the stage, as well as the book itself, but adapting To the Lighthouse for the stage, because there's very little dialogue in To the Lighthouse if you look at it. So what you have to do is you have to make dialogue out of the interior dialogue of each of the characters. And when you do that, it's hilarious, because suddenly you're finding out what everybody's thinking about everyone and how angry they are and how they are going to do it different. And you find out extraordinary things about them, you know, like that wonderful passage when when James finally goes to bed and says, children never forget. And that's why it's very important what one says, and such relief when they go to bed. Yes. And then she talks about becoming this wedge-shaped core of darkness, you know, just sinking into ourselves. We rise at times, and that's how you see us. But really, I'm only myself as this wedge-shaped core of darkness that is seeping, unfathomable, and ever-spreading. So, I mean, these are the beautiful things about Mrs. Ramsay. That's what I love. But I also love that dark romantic strain in her. You know, she's and Mr. Ramsay, they are incurable romantics. And they absolutely, I think they're great examples of that code of what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. And if that sounds a bit retro, you know, in this world where everything is much more fluid and we question all of these things. And I think that's one of the things that gives us a lot to argue with against the book. It was a lot that Virginia Woolf was arguing against as an artist. This very late Victorian Edwardian mother who was severe in her beauty and in the cold.
Absolutely. And you're getting at the intergenerational struggle, both in the novel and in your play, which I think is so beautifully done, because you have both James and Cam, the children, in their resistance to, especially in Act 3, their resistance to their father. But even, I just wanted to point out, there's this, one of my favorite moments of being able to film this production is in Act 1, where, you know, fearless Cam running around the stage is played by the movie camera itself. And I thought that got at the lightness and the speed and like the fearlessness of this little girl who is going to need to resist her Victorian, you know, late Victorian Edwardian parents, because she's going to have to grow up into a different world, a post-World War I world, as Lily Briscoe's own resistance to Mrs. Ramsay. Like, it doesn't have to be your way. I have my work. I can be an artist. I don't have to get married. And I guess just quickly on Lily, because she's, I think, equally, the ambivalence is there too. And I love that you put that word ambivalence in there, because of course that's the word Woolf in her late life hit upon to describe her relationship with her parents, right? And ambivalence is not indifference. It means, as you have in the play, I love them intensely. I hate them intensely. I love them. It's the shadow and the light. Is that what, I'm trying to pivot to Lily Briscoe here in her painting, actually, but I wonder if that is, when you think about Lily Briscoe's painting, is that what she's trying to capture when she puts Mrs. Ramsay as the wedge-shaped core of darkness?
I think so, yeah. And I think Lily, without having the vocabulary in the first part, you know, I mean, she describes it beautifully, you know, it's like hunting it's like a vision I had, and then I have to, you know, hunt for it among mothers and children and, you know, houses and whatever. But I think she is the apprentice artist in part one, and Carmichael is the finished artist. Yes. And I think in part three, then Lily is becoming closer to coming out of her apprenticeship. And you know, the last line of the book, I've had my vision, that she is able to articulate. But yes, absolutely, that whole modernist thing, that it's not going to be illustration or representation anymore. It's going to be light. It's going to be play of light and shadow. It's going to be different strokes. And I think she's grappling with that, and nobody understands her. And she doesn't have the confidence either. All she knows is, I must resist. Like, I'll put the tree in the middle and I'll never marry, as she says at the dinner table. And that is all. I put the tree in the middle of my painting and I will never marry. And then it takes her 10 years to finish that painting, because she comes back in part three and she's still trying to paint Mrs. Ramsay, and Mrs. Ramsay arrives back. They have these conversations. I mean, it's an astonishing book. And you know what? You know, the book is so theatrical. It was a joy adapting it. I mean, Virginia Woolf is a born playwright, dare I say. And, you know, if you look at Between the Acts, I mean, what is it? It's a play with bits of narrative interspersed, you know, her final book.
Of course.
You know, she was heading that way. And I know Mrs. Dalloway comes after The Lighthouse, and, you know, the kind of received opinion is Mrs. Dalloway, I adore it as well, but it's a much smoother book. I think To the Lighthouse is so rough, and that's what I love about it. It's everywhere. It's the whole universe. It's all these minds speaking. This incredible landscape, you know, the waves crash into the shore and the cliffs, and heading to the lighthouse, and the garden blowing, and 8 children and servants and friends. It's just, yeah.
We're going to have to move into our Q&A, but just one quick last question about the genius and the brilliance of Olwen Fouer, who's playing Augustus Carmichael, and so beautifully. And then the end of the play, where you give Woolf's words in a sketch of the past, which we might say is like Woolf's vision to mirror Lily's, but you give those lines to Augustus Carmichael, and I found myself in tears at that moment, because it paired so beautifully together. And I actually had a very nerdy question, which is the other line you give Augustus is from Cymbeline, you know, hang there like fruit, my soul, till the tree dies, which I don't think is into The Lighthouse. What drove, and this is my very specific nerdy question, but what drove you to put that line from Cymbeline into The Lighthouse and giving it to Augustus?
Okay, well, you know, fear no more the heat of the sun, you know, that great, you know, nor the furious winters rages that hourly task has done, home gone, etc. That's in Cymbeline, and that is one of Virginia Woolf's favorites. Yes. She was always quoting it. The other great thing was out of Lear, you know, Lear going mad on the heath, thou art the thing in itself. And the thing itself, she's obsessed with that phrase. So hang there like fruit my soul till the tree die is my favorite line in the English language. So I just gave it to her. So I figured actually, maybe I took a bit of poetic license here, but I figure if she loves fear no more the heat of the sun, and she loves thou art the thing in itself, of course she loves hang there like fruit my soul till the tree die. But I think, and I can't remember because I'm dreadful on my sources, but I think you'll find it in there, in the diaries or the essays or the letters. I think you'll find it there.
I wouldn't be surprised. Apparently Tennyson, the poet Tennyson's, like, that was the last line he wanted to hear on his deathbed. And then Tennyson is indirectly related to Woolf's great aunt, or not related, but was in the artistic milieu of Freshwater with Julia Margaret Cameron, who was Woolf's great aunt. So
yeah,
I'm sure.
Who took all the photographs of Julia Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah. I bet it's in there. I don't think I'm even making it up, you know.
Someone will write a paper on it.
Well,
And then
any excuse to get that line in anywhere is what I think.
So we've got Shakespeare, we've got Woolf, and we've got Marina Carr. And it looks to me like, according to my clock, that I should start opening up to Q&A. So everyone, if you've got questions for Marina, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. We do have a first question. It's from Rita. Rita, I think I know you from Brazil. Rita says, I'm beyond excited about the play. I wish I'd known of your love for Woolf when we met, Marina. This is just perfect. So maybe you know Rita from Brazil.
I do. Yeah, I met Rita a few years ago in Brazil, in Florianopolis.
That's where she's from.
Yeah.
She says, thank you both so much for this talk. It's not much of a question, but is the play text getting published soon? I'd love to translate it.
Oh, wow, great. Yeah, hopefully it will. I mean, because of the pandemic and everything, you know, I need to talk. I need to talk to Dinah Wood at Faber and Faber, and I also need to talk to Peter Fallon at Gallery, because everybody's behind themselves. But yeah, it will be published. It will, and hopefully soon.
That will be lovely. And also getting your work published, I think, is phenomenal. I mean, not published, translated. This is we've just co-edited a book on Woolf around the world in so many different languages and so many different cultures. So I'm very excited that your work too, right, then moves about the world in these different languages and cultures. We have another question from Gaetano. Hi, Marina. I saw the production yesterday and I loved seeing Olwen Fuer and Derval Crotty on the same stage, both of them acting in a play of yours. I was going to ask this too. How was it for you, given your long, it's Valentina. Sorry, this is from Valentina. Apologies. But how was it working with those two actors with whom you have a long-term collaboration?
Well, you know, it's kind of talismanic for me now, because I revere both of them, and they're both absolutely brilliant, and I want them in everything I write. So when I'm talking to directors, I have to just stop myself. It was extraordinary, and these are two brilliant actors, and their range and their knowledge at this point is extraordinary, and what they bring. And hello, Valentina. Valentina is one of my Italian translators, so it's great. Great to have all my translators here tonight. Hi, Valentina. Yeah, it was, it's extraordinary. Dervla and Olwen and Dervla, where do I start? They're just incredible. And also Aoife, who I've worked with, who plays Lily Briscoe, and Declan, who plays Mr. Ramsey, and Nick. I mean, they're all just gorgeous. And I love working with seasoned actors, because the knowledge they have, they're so eclectic. The amount of research, if you think of a seasoned actor, the amount of research they have to do for a part, they are so informed, and you'll never be in the company of a good actor without learning extraordinary things. So it was, the short answer, Valentina, it was absolutely fantastic. It was a joy. And also working with Annabelle Cumming, who is just an absolutely brilliant director. So it was joy all the way.
I was wondering, I've got a question. I think one audience member here is my friend and colleague Anne Byrne, who teaches who's a Woolf scholar at the University in Galway. And I know Anne is working on a book about Woolf's one trip to Ireland. Woolf and Virginia and Leonard Woolf came over in 1934.
Yeah.
And when we think of Woolf in an Irish context, it's it's sort of a difficult relationship, right? Because it gets at politics and colonialism.
Well, she had a ball. She went to Kerry and she stayed at Bowen's Court, because Elizabeth Bowen was a friend of hers. And there was one housekeeper that came in and just would not leave. And the housekeeper was just nattering on in her, Limerick, North Kerry accent. And when she left, Woolf has a comment in her diary about, these people should be the greatest storytellers in the world. And she went through what the housekeeper was telling her, basically all the gossip from the parish. And of course, Woolf was such a gossip herself. And she relished it. So, Yeah, absolutely. And she went all over Kerry, and I don't know, did she get out to the islands, but loads of stories about her trip to Ireland.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And actually, Anne Byrne just popped up on the Q&A. And she asks, why did Marina choose to adapt to The Lighthouse as opposed to one of Woolf's other texts and with an Irish theatre company?
Well, because I have a long friendship with Annabelle, and we were trying to figure out something that we both mutually loved, and we hit upon To the Lighthouse. And then, of course, practical concerns come in, because Katie Mitchell had done The Waves, and Vanessa Redgrave had just made that beautiful film of Mrs. Dalloway, and Tilda Swinton had done a gorgeous Orlando. So, I mean, To the Lighthouse has been a book that's been with me a long time. Also, I think we both thought that it was, there's something, I mean, I don't know what you think about it. I haven't seen the online version yet, but I saw the live stage performance. There was one performance done in an empty theatre in the Everyman. I saw that, and I thought it really worked on stage, but it felt to me like it's universal. I think the problem sometimes with Woolf is they make it very English and make it very class oriented. And I think this book, To the Lighthouse, it's about family, it's about love, it's about grief, it's about death, it's about the generations. It would work in Swahili, it would work in Irish, it would work in America, it would work anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that was the attraction. I also think there's so much of her in this book. She's Cam in a way, she's her mother in a way, she's Lily Briscoe in a way, she's Augustus Carmichael in a way. She's all of them. She's all over this book.
That's beautifully said. It's I'm trying to think of the line from Mrs. Dalloway. It's like the filaments of her being spread through and touch each of the characters. We have I don't know how much longer we can go on, but we have a great question. We haven't talked about the dinner party, the bouffe en daube. And somebody asks, the dinner party scene was terrific. Oh, wait till you see the video version is amazing. The dinner party scene was terrific. What inspired you to transpose it in time to the modern day? So it's interesting because you've got both the Edwardian characters and then there's a projection of the characters in modern dress. So when you have those two projections, were you trying to, this question says, was it to highlight the role of women as having changed but still remains the same? In other words, the characters in modern dress are still fighting some of the old battles, right? Why does my husband need all this, pity and sympathy, the fatal sterility of men? So had you written into the play the idea that the dinner party would be both the Edwardian characters and the more modern dress characters, or was that more of a performance decision?
That was a directorial decision. That was Annabelle and Jose, and mainly Annabelle. That was her idea. So I'm trying to see, which I'm going to watch after this. I'm trying to see how that works. I think it's a brilliant idea. Probably hard to pull off. See, one of the things about this, because of the COVID and everything, that we can't have audiences. Well, we can just about have socially distanced audiences here in Ireland. I don't know what it's like in the States yet. So a lot of things had to be adjusted for this hybrid version, which is filmed on a theatre, rehearsed as a theatre piece, but with Annabelle's eye and the actor's eye and Jose, the film director's eye, very much in how we're going to deliver this for online, for film. So it's kind of a hybrid between theatre and film. So I can't take any credit for that dinner party scene. That is completely Annabelle, Jose, and the actors. Much as I would love to.
Another colleague, Shyla McGiff, writes that she has found the source for Hang There Like Fruit My Soul in Woolf's letters. Woolf wrote in a letter to Toby Stephen, 1901, and she writes to her brother, and this is the brother that sadly passes away in 1906, so way too young. And she sends that line to her brother. And then she writes, if that doesn't send a shiver down your spine, even if you are in the middle of cold grouse and coffee, you are no true Shakespeare.
Oh, well, you see, there it is.
There it is.
Can't make anything up.
Well, it's also Wolf at 19. I love it that there's that beautiful romantic idealism there.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions. And maybe there's two I can combine here. One is sort of how does Woolf's, I think you've been talking about this, how does Woolf's modernism resonate with your aesthetic, your dramaturgy?
Well, more and more, I would hope. I mean, she's just, she's huge. And, her experimentation and her innovation, I've learned so much from her. Mm-hmm. So, I would hope this was a huge thing for us to do for Annabelle and myself and for the actors. It was a huge learning curve. The journey, writing it and speaking with Annabelle, the director, and then the actors coming on board and taking it on. For me personally, I think there's no one really like her, in terms of the body of work, in terms of the energy, in terms of just that kind of hawk eye on all of us, on herself, on the world, and also, what very few people forget about Virginia Woolf is she was hilarious. Yes. And the diaries are just hilarious. And she met everyone, she saw everyone, she had an opinion on everyone. She was so neurotic about everything. But she was so funny. She knew she was. And she mocked herself. And she was a mocker.
Yes.
But she wasn't cruel. Well, maybe she was cruel like all of us. But how do I put it? She could, she's like someone with a scythe, and she just went through language like that. So it reminds me of what Tolstoy said about Shakespeare. Tolstoy hated Shakespeare because he said about him, the thing about Shakespeare is he took all the wheat and left the rest of us with the chaff. And I feel a bit like that with Virginia Woolf, And so Tolstoy was always trying to measure himself. He hated King Lear and he hated Shakespeare because he wanted to be Shakespeare. And actually, what Tolstoy really wanted was to be God. But so there is that thing, I think, with Virginia Woolf that when you read her, you think, oh God, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. And I can't think of a greater compliment. And it was just a joy. And there's very, very little of my lines in this play.
Yeah,
it is mostly Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
So much as I would like to take credit, that has to be very much acknowledged, and I've been very strong about that. It really is an adaptation, and the way sort of. The Anna Karenina I did was an adaptation. The Hecuba I did was not an adaptation. People call it was not there's not a line of Euripides in the Hecuba I did. So people get very confused because when they don't read the book, then they think, oh, but if you know the book and then you watch the adaptation, you'll know the difference. And I think that's a very important distinction.
Mm-hmm. We have one last question. And again, it might be something we've touched on, but maybe there's more to say about it. In the play, there are, and I think we've mentioned, there are mostly inner thoughts of characters in dialogue rather than conventional exchange of conversations. Does Marina find it challenging for a playwright to develop dialogues in such a way? Is it challenging or do you relish it?
No, it wasn't challenging at all because I was literally putting down Virginia Woolf's lines into dialogue. That's all. Maybe changing a preposition here and there. That was it. And of course you can't put in the whole book. So you're trying to keep the rhythm, you're trying to keep the exchange, you're trying to keep the meaning. But it wasn't a challenge, it was a joy. And actually the biggest challenge for myself and for Annabelle was, I think my first draft was nearly 300 pages. And you can't put 300 pages on the stage. Well, maybe you could if people sat in theaters like they used to, for 8 hours at a stretch, but not in this country. and certainly not online, I think. But so it was what had to be left out. So we had to cut a lot out, you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully we've got the spirit of the thing, and hopefully we have done Virginia Woolf justice.
You absolutely have. And I love this idea of the playwright as the arranger, or even the musical composer, with you and Annabelle, the director, as, you know, putting the pieces together to get at the spirit or the essence of the novel, which I think you've done so beautifully. Please, everyone, please watch this performance. Please stream it online. Someone has asked, we have one last question. And this is kind of this is one that Woolf scholars always debate about. Someone has asked, I guess through the YouTube, how Marina feels about descriptions like Lily Briscoe's Chinese eyes, right? Because in today's light, this is, I mean, we have endless debates on the Woolf listserv about Woolf, when Woolf comes out with things that are racist or anti-Semitic, you know, how do we deal with them? Is this something that you thought about? Because you did keep the Chinese eyes in the play. Is that something that you thought about, or at that point were you just trying to keep Woolf's text as it is? Because that is part of how Mrs. Ramsay thinks of Lily Briscoe.
Well, yeah. And it's very much of its time, but I have to say I have Chinese eyes, so I don't see that as an insult. You know, I have the slant in my eyes. One of my daughters have them. I have a brother who has them. You know, why is that? Why is that negative?
Mm-hmm.
Why are people so quick to jump? Why should that be, you know, interpreted against this yardstick of political correctness?
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge problem with that. Now, I know there are boundaries. I don't see it as insulting. I see it as an image. I see it as description.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and someone actually.
I'm very aware of those arguments. And I'm also very aware how they curtail the imagination. Now, polemically, and you know, for if you believe in the teleological, you know, advance of the species, that we're getting better and better. all of these little checks and balances are very, very necessary. But imagination is another thing, you know, and I think I worry about how anodyne the language will become if that part of expression and imagination is constantly being surveyed and under surveillance.
Well, and also we can't censor Virginia Woolf, right? Like, this is what Woolf wrote. These are her lines, and it's our responsibility for you as the adapter to maintain the authenticity of her prose. Like, you can't just go in and take out the phrase you don't like. So no, that makes a lot of sense. Now we are coming up on 10:45. I feel like I could keep talking to you for quite a long time, Marina, but you're a busy person with an incredibly successful career. I am so delighted that we got a chance to talk. I think Rachel of the Irish Arts Center wants me to remind you before we say goodbye that you can, and Rachel, maybe you could put this in the chat to everyone, the link. Here we go. Thank you for attending, Rachel says. Please, everyone, watch the video stream. The performance is available just through this weekend, through Sunday evening, as a limited stream event with Cork Midsummer, Everyman Theatre, and Hatch Theatre. For tickets, you can visit irishartscenter.org. This is in the chat. And we've got applause from Holland. So this is actually lovely. We've got applause from Holland. We've got applause from Brazil. We've got, applause from Italy. So the pandemic sucked, but I'm glad that we get to gather globally, even if it is remotely. Thank you so much, Marina, and congratulations on just a triumph of a play.
Thank you, Catherine. It was a pleasure talking to you.
All right, everyone. I think fare thee well. It's Saturday evening for those of you in Europe. Have a lovely evening, and please watch the play. Thank you. Bye-bye.